Dustin shocked me because we were shooting a scene.
This. Look, you're gonna have to do it. You're gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to do it.
I'm very sorry about this.
My wine glass was sitting there and he...
For nearly 50 years, Meryl Streep has been known as one of Hollywood's most talented and professional stars. She avoided public drama, protected her reputation, and rarely spoke about personal conflicts. But at 76, Streep reportedly revealed that there were 6 actors she deeply disliked working with. The confession surprised fans who had always viewed her as calm, kind, and diplomatic. What happened behind the scenes to create such strong feelings? From creative disagreements to broken trust and personal tension, these hidden conflicts reveal a darker side of Hollywood and may completely change how audiences see these famous stars. The spark of hidden tensions. For nearly 5 decades, Meryl Streep maintained a reputation for grace and professionalism that few in Hollywood could rival. She was the consummate diplomat on set. No public feuds, no scandals, no grudges aired outside private circles. Yet behind this carefully curated image, tensions with certain co-stars simmered quietly, shaping careers and relationships in subtle but profound ways. It was only recently, at the age of 76, that Streep unveiled a truth many had never suspected. She harbored deep resentment, some might even say hatred, towards 6 prominent actors she worked with. This revelation stunned Hollywood insiders and fans alike. How could one of the industry's most respected actors, known for her kindness and composure, carry such intense feelings for her peers? The answer lies not in petty rivalries or gossip, but in fundamental clashes over acting philosophies, personal boundaries, and professional respect. What Streep described was less about personality conflicts and more about creative incompatibility on a visceral level. The 6 actors Streep named were not minor figures or forgotten collaborators. They were some of the biggest names in the business, icons the public often assumed she admired. Her disclosure went beyond naming names. She revealed why and how these relationships fractured, offering detailed accounts that laid bare the cost of perfection and pride in Hollywood's rarefied atmosphere. Part of what makes these grudges so compelling is that they were silent for so long. Behind closed doors and away from the cameras, Streep endured moments that tested her patience and challenged her dedication to the craft. While she never publicized her displeasure, her choices afterward, declining roles, distancing herself from projects, spoke volumes. The grudges became an invisible but powerful force, guiding her career decisions. The depth of these tensions often stemmed from fundamental differences in artistic approach. Streep's method was rigorous and precise, rooted in months of preparation and research designed to honor the emotional truth of a character. For some of her co-stars, acting was an instinctive or spontaneous art, embracing chaos or improvisation rather than structure. These opposing styles triggered conflicts that were as much philosophical as personal. More than disagreements over technique, some clashes drifted into deeper territory, like respect and trust. In a profession made of vulnerability, actors have to lean on each other's consent and professional boundaries. When those get crossed, whether it's unpredictable on-set behavior or straight-up physical actions, the damage doesn't vanish just because the camera's cut. Streep's own stories show, pretty vividly, how raw and consequential those moments were. The industry's reverence for Streep sometimes covered up what was really going on. Fans and critics kept watching the polished performances, the bright interviews, the awards. Very few people saw the backstage fractures that quietly shaped those shining scenes. Now, through her candid confession, Streep pulls back the curtain on that shadowy corner of Hollywood where talent and temperament meet too closely. It matters to understand that Streep's grievances were never just ego or rivalry or some petty thing like that. They came from her more serious commitment to acting as a moral and emotional discipline, a kind of sacred craft that asks for completeness and respect. When co-stars did what she felt was careless or dismissive, it struck her like a betrayal, not of a person exactly, but of art itself. All that hidden tension lays the groundwork for stories featuring 6 remarkable actors, plus the complicated, sometimes painful dynamics that unfolded between them and Streep. Each relationship shows a different clash of personalities and principles, and you can see how creative collaboration can turn into a battlefield before anyone even admits it. The friction between Streep and these actors shaped not only their performances, but also their careers and personal legacies. Next, we'll explore the first of these iconic creative clashes, the push-pull between Meryl Streep's deliberate precision and Alec Baldwin's instinctive spontaneity. Alec Baldwin, instinct versus precision. Meryl Streep's approach to acting has always been methodical. She prepares with painstaking care, dissecting character motivations, rhythms, and emotional beats to ensure every moment rings true. For her, acting is a discipline that requires absolute respect for the truth within a scene. Alec Baldwin, by contrast, thrives on spontaneity and improvisation. To him, authenticity emerges in the moment, often through instinctual choices or playful line changes. When Streep and Baldwin were cast together in It's Complicated, director Nancy Meyers hoped their contrasting styles would create on-screen balance and dynamic energy. Instead, those differences ignited one of the most quietly intense creative clashes of Streep's career. From the shoot's first week, crew members noticed tension under the surface. Streep's controlled posture stiffened whenever Baldwin rewrote lines or veered off script mid-scene. Streep never confronted Baldwin directly about the frustration. But key moments revealed her true feelings. After a disrupted rehearsal, she was overheard saying, "Comedy has to be grounded in truth. Otherwise, it's just noise." To her, Baldwin's unpredictability seemed to undermine the emotional core she believed essential to acting. Baldwin, for his part, viewed her deliberate preparation as overthinking and limiting the spontaneity that fuels performance. Years later, Streep described their dynamic diplomatically. "We had different philosophies." That understatement masked a pointed divide. Baldwin joked openly about their friction, admitting, "Oh, Meryl hated me. Absolutely, but I was having too much fun." Yet he acknowledged that they never fully connected on a creative or personal level. Their feud never exploded publicly, but it quietly shaped decisions afterward. Meryl Streep has reportedly turned down a few film projects that involved Baldwin after It's Complicated, and honestly, they haven't worked together since. What's left of their relationship today looks like a polite kind of distance, cordial during awards nights and respectful in interviews, yet still clearly split by styles that are so different, it's hard to reconcile. In a way, their whole thing is a kind of example that artistic approaches can build rifts, not just personalities. This clash points to a bigger tension in acting approaches, like the constant pull between structure and freedom, precision and instinct. For Streep, acting feels like a craft that needs preparation, research, and carefully chosen decisions. For Baldwin, it sounds more like a playground powered by intuition and risk-taking in the moment. Neither method is bad by itself, but combine them poorly, and you get friction, maybe even full-on disagreements. And there's the thing. Baldwin tends to bring improvisational energy, while Streep seeks emotional truth through discipline. Their on-set interactions show how difficult it is when collaborators can't line up on process, even if they both care. That friction doesn't stay contained either. It echoes in ensemble work, where everyone is negotiating, pretty much every day. Even with all that, both actors still manage to leave audiences with performances people remember. But underneath the scenes, the creative disconnect was pretty obvious. Their story is basically a lesson on how personal temperaments and stylistic differences can shape not only what you see on screen, but also the professional ties behind it. Their dynamic also hinted at how Streep would deal with later professional conflicts. Quiet resolve, not a public confrontation. Next, there's another story that sounds similar in temperament. During one of her most iconic films, Sophie's Choice, alongside Kevin Kline. Kevin Kline, impulse meets discipline. Kevin Kline and Meryl Streep's pairing in Sophie's Choice seemed perfect on the surface. Two brilliant actors cast in a devastating drama with undeniable chemistry. Streep's work on the film was the result of months of relentless preparation. She studied Holocaust survivor testimonies, worked with dialect coaches, and learned both Polish and German, believing every detail of Sophie's voice and trauma was essential to her truth. Klein's approach couldn't have been more different. Where Streep demanded structure and immersion, Klein embraced impulse and spontaneity. He preferred to move loosely through scenes, letting instinct guide him rather than detailed preparation. He believed the best acting came from not planning, allowing the moment to shape choices beyond logic or strict rehearsal. This fundamental difference created tension immediately. During a rehearsal, Klein reportedly stopped Streep abruptly to ask, "Are you sure the audience cares more about your vowel sounds than what she's feeling?" To Streep, this was not a question, but a wound. Sophie's voice was the foundation of her trauma and shattered identity, a cultural fracture she painstakingly built. Klein's dismissal felt like a repudiation of her entire process. After filming, Klein's casual interview remarks describing Streep's method as a bit academic deepened the divide. While he likely meant it lightly and perhaps respectfully, for Streep, who had emotionally bled for the role, this trivialization was a quiet slap in the face. On set, cordiality remained, but the warmth that might have existed evaporated almost instantly. Producers and crew noted the immediate shift. Streep respected Klein's talent, but no longer fully trusted him. Their professional distance grew, with Streep declining every offer to work with Klein again, despite multiple attempts over the years. At award shows and events, they maintained formal politeness, but the unspoken tension was palpable. Klein himself laughed off the tension when asked later, "Meryl likes to prepare. I like to leap. That's all." Beneath the humor was an acknowledgement of fundamental artistic differences, softened but never erased. Streep, however, never softened her stance, not publicly nor privately. Their story captures the collision of two distinct acting philosophies: Streep's meticulous excavation of character versus Klein's embrace of impulsive performance. The creative distance they maintained underscored the emotional costs when collaborating artists failed to find shared ground. Even among the brightest stars, clashes over craft and temperament can quietly shape careers and personal legacies in unexpected ways. The next chapter reveals how Streep's silent war with Nicholson underscored a fundamental divide about what acting truly means. Jack Nicholson, charisma collides with control. The tension between Meryl Streep and Jack Nicholson is one of Hollywood's most infamous silent rivalries, one that never made headlines but quietly shaped careers and casting decisions for decades. Studios spent years trying to pair these two icons, convinced their combined star power would electrify audiences. Scripts for heavy dramas, literary adaptations, and political thrillers routinely floated the idea. Yet, after a few early meetings, those projects dissolved, not due to lack of chemistry, but a deep philosophical divide. Streep viewed acting as a moral duty, a vocation demanding discipline, thorough research, and unwavering respect for emotional truth. Nicholson, in contrast, approached acting with swagger and attitude, embracing instinct, provocation, and a rebellious spirit. He once famously mocked preparation as intellectual masturbation, a comment that rippled through Hollywood like wildfire. She had built her career on mastering dialects, psychology, and fully disappearing into characters with religious devotion. Nicholson's public dismissal of that dedication wasn't just a difference of opinion. It felt like a direct attack on her craft and values. At one pivotal studio meeting, her expression remained unreadable, but everyone sensed the moment she was done. Nicholson didn't retreat. He merely chuckled at her intensity. Later, he apparently told some friends, "She's brilliant, but man, a little tightly wound." That offhand bit only widened the gap, more or less. And Juliet Taylor, the casting director, put it in plain terms. Nicholson embodied everything Streep thought was off with modern stardom. Even though Streep never really aired grievances in public, she quietly shut down project after project that had Nicholson on the roster, regardless of how high the prestige was or how the paycheck looked. Their so-called feud never turned into a full-blown scandal or one of those face-to-face confrontations. Still, the impact was pretty deep. They never worked together, and studios seemed to learn early that trying to pair them up was basically a no-go. At industry events, their small talk stayed polite, even warm in a way, but it always felt distant, like a courteous handshake over something you can't cross. It came off like a duel, but not the shouting kind, more like two sets of core values showing up through career decisions, not public sparring. Nicholson's instinctive, carefree way of moving through roles clashed hard with Streep's carefully built artistry. He seemed to thrive on provocation. She needed respect and real preparation, like timing and precision. That quiet impasse highlighted the emotional plus philosophical rifts that can linger even when the collaboration looks successful from the outside. Their whole story turned into this unspoken warning sign about what happens when raw brilliance meets ideals that just don't match. For Streep, the Nicholson situation wasn't only about one performer. It felt more like a wider frustration with how Hollywood keeps reshaping itself, sometimes so fast it's dizzying. It doubled down on her belief that her craft has seriousness and a kind of sanctity, and it made it clear she wouldn't cut corners or bend to please the room. The next conflict further exposed the raw tensions behind Streep's polished facade, this time involving Dustin Hoffman's famously volatile method acting. Dustin Hoffman, method meets boundaries. Dustin Hoffman's reputation for pushing boundaries and embracing chaos stood in stark contrast to Meryl Streep's disciplined, controlled approach to acting. On the set of Kramer vs. Kramer, this collision became one of the most fraught and quietly bitter divides in American film history. Streep treated acting like a surgeon approaching tissue, careful, respectful, intentional, with full awareness of emotional anatomy. Every breath and silence was precise, part of an unspoken contract of trust between actors. Hoffman lived by an entirely different creed, a soldier of the method who believed in creating truth through tension and risk. He once told a young actor, "You can't fake reality. You have to force it." This philosophy manifested in unpredictable and sometimes violent behavior on set. Early in production, during a tense scene, Hoffman suddenly slapped Streep hard across the face, without warning, rehearsal, or consent. For Hoffman, this was a technique meant to heighten authenticity. For Streep, it was a shocking violation. The sound echoed through the studio, freezing everyone in disbelief. Streep didn't yell or cry, she simply froze, an arresting silence that unsettled even seasoned directors. Later she would say with surgical clarity, "That was overstepping. That was not acting." Those words carried the invisible weight of a wound she never fully healed. As filming continued, Hoffman's method only intensified. He threw real objects, screamed genuine insults, and ad-libbed lines, blurring the line between performance and reality. Director Robert Benton found himself caught between Streep's calculated artistry and Hoffman's chaos-first approach, often forced into mediator roles. Crew members recalled that some of the most powerful film moments were less performances and more eruptions of raw emotion. Despite the palpable tension, the world applauded the finished film. Hoffman won Best Actor, and Streep took Best Supporting Actress at the Oscars. Yet behind the acclaim, their personal battlefield remained scorched. Streep walked away claiming professional success, but carrying personal bruises few imagined. When reflecting later on the experience, she called it professionally productive, but personally intolerable. Hoffman's responses over the years vacillated, sometimes defensive, sometimes half-apologetic, justifying his actions as efforts to serve the scene. "Maybe I pushed too far," he conceded. Yet Streep never softened. Their paths never crossed professionally again, and their relationship remained one of the most significant and publicly veiled tensions in their storied careers. This clash revealed the high cost when artistic conviction ignores personal boundaries. Streep's experience with Hoffman underscored the limits of method acting when respect dissolves. It set a new standard for her. Discipline, preparation, and trust were non-negotiable pillars, principles she would uphold long after the cameras stopped rolling. Artistic passion can spark brilliance, but without respect and shared values, the creative fires can become destructive. Next, we see how Streep's frustrations extended beyond established legends to a rising star who embodied the changing face of Hollywood itself. Gwyneth Paltrow, talent versus legacy. When Gwyneth Paltrow emerged as a rising star in the 1990s, She represented a Hollywood shift that deeply unsettled Meryl Streep. For Streep, acting was a craft built on serious, disciplined work, a painstaking climb earned through training, emotional excavation, and relentless preparation. Paltrow's ascent, in contrast, appeared effortless. Born into privilege with notable parents and immediate access to industry doors, her career was seen by Streep as emblematic of a new kind of celebrity, one propelled by legacy, timing, and branding rather than struggle. Paltrow's early success was meteoric. Critics and audiences celebrated her elegance and poise, while film roles landed seemingly without resistance. To Streep, this embodiment of inherited stardom was not just an aesthetic difference, but a fundamental departure from the hard-fought discipline she valued. A longtime friend recalled Streep's private remark, "It's talent without the work, fame without the struggle." That sentiment encapsulated her growing discomfort with the changing landscape of Hollywood. The defining moment in this quiet rift came at the Oscars, when Paltrow won Best Actress for Shakespeare in Love. Streep, having delivered one of her most demanding performances in One True Thing, was left empty-handed. Though she smiled graciously for the cameras, privately, she was furious. Friends said she dismissed the award season that year as a marketing contest dressed up as prestige. She never named Paltrow publicly, but insiders saw the chilling effect. In the years that followed, the distance between the two actresses grew wider. Streep praised other rising stars known for their rigorous preparation, women like Kate Blanchett, Amy Adams, and Jessica Chastain, but notably never mentioned Paltrow. Their public interactions were polite, yet cool, brief smiles or quick nods, with no warmth or sustained conversation. The divide was unspoken, but unmistakable. Paltrow herself kept this pretty respectful public angle, you know. She'd often call Streep the greatest, and it sounded like genuine admiration. Still, behind the scenes, as the report goes, there was this heavy feeling, like the disapproval from Streep just sat on her shoulders. One former publicist even recalled Paltrow backstage at some event, just kind of sighing, muttering, "Meryl's never liked me. I don't know what I ever did." And that quiet, it really did say a lot, even when nobody said much at all, about how Hollywood mixes respect, rivalry, and the kind of unspoken judgment people don't like to admit. That whole tension pointed to a wider cultural shift that bothered Streep too, because celebrity culture was coming in harder, where image and branding mattered more than full artistic immersion. For an actor who measured success by depth and work ethic, this new deal was hard to swallow. It didn't feel like just a personal disagreement either, more like a generational and ideological clash, almost like two different languages colliding. Even with all that cold air, Streep stayed professional and stayed locked in on her craft. She didn't let the industry politics run her choices. Instead, she kept picking roles that pressed on her emotionally and artistically, and in a way that made her stand out from the lazy glamour that floats around some contemporaries. Over time, her approach became its own kind of signal, commitment to art rather than celebrity, like she was choosing one lane and refusing to drift. That rift with Paltrow showed how personal and ideological differences in Hollywood can get, going far beyond simple career rivalry and into basic beliefs about what acting is supposed to be and what success should look like. It was a subtle break, but also a potent one, and most fans never truly saw it coming. As the whole landscape shifted around her, Streep's experience with Paltrow was like a reminder that even the greatest artists get frustrated when cultural tides move. Yet, the story of their divide stood in contrast to the next clash, one fueled not by publicity or legacy, but by a profound difference in acting philosophy with Jeremy Irons. Jeremy Irons, emotional depth versus architectural acting. Meryl Streep and Jeremy Irons, two classically trained actors known for their intelligence and technique, were expected to be a perfect match on screen. Both possessed fierce dedication to craft, yet their artistic philosophies diverged in ways that created palpable tension during their collaboration. For Streep, acting was excavation, digging deep into a character's trauma, biography, and emotional truth. Every vocal inflection, breath pause, and physical gesture mattered as pieces of a complex puzzle. Irons, however, approached acting as architecture, elegant, controlled, sculpted. His style favored refinement and restraint, shaping characters like polished marble statues. While Streep embraced emotional chaos as an avenue to truth, Irons viewed such intensity as excessive, preferring a quiet, composed presence. This fundamental difference set the stage for conflict not in words but in energy and presence. One rehearsal came to symbolize the divide. Streep had labored meticulously over her character's accent, layering cultural nuance into every phrase. After listening, Irons reportedly remarked, "It's very technical. Don't you think the audience will care more about the feeling than the phonetics?" The room went silent. To Irons, it was an innocent observation. To Streep, it was sacrilege, a dismissal of the very foundation of her painstaking process. Witnesses recalled the atmosphere shifted immediately. Streep did not raise her voice or argue. She simply hardened, drawing an invisible but unyielding line between them. From that moment on, their on-screen scenes became tension-filled duels where his cool detachment clashed with her raw vulnerability. They stood inches apart, but occupied entirely different emotional worlds. Crew members whispered that they had never seen two actors so physically close, yet feel so emotionally distant. One assistant director described it perfectly. They were in the same scene, but in two different worlds. The collision of approaches transformed what should have been synergy into a series of battles played out through subtle looks and fractured energy. Irons tried to maintain diplomacy in public, later saying, "We simply approach things differently. She digs inward. I build outward." His measured calm contrasted sharply with Streep's unyielding intensity. Privately, Streep was far less charitable, once remarking without naming him, "Some actors mistake restraint for depth, stillness for truth." The underlying message was clear. Their relationship never recovered. While polite and professional at industry events, they remained guarded and separate. Two talents unwilling or unable to reconcile their artistic worlds. Neither sought to collaborate again, and producers learned that pitching a project starring both was an exercise in futility. This clash revealed how deeply acting styles influence not just performance, but personal rapport. Even icons can be divided by interpretation and method, transforming collaboration into conflict when core philosophies clash. For Streep, it reaffirmed a lifelong commitment to emotional immersion as sacred craft. Even the most iconic stars carry unspoken battles that shape their art and legacies. The final chapter looks at how these experiences influenced Streep's career choices and the price of the relentless pursuit of perfection. The price of perfection. Meryl Streep's extraordinary career is defined not only by her unmatched talent, but also by the quiet battles that shaped her path. The grudges she harbored against 6 actors reveal a world where artistic integrity and personal boundaries intersect with the harsh realities of Hollywood. These conflicts were more than momentary clashes. They influenced the choices she made, the projects she accepted, and the collaborations she avoided. For Streep, pursuing perfection came at a high personal and professional cost. Her commitment to acting as a serious discipline left little room for compromise. Each rejection of a proposed project involving one of these actors was a clear statement that for Streep, working with incompatible artists was not worth sacrificing her creative standards. Industry insiders say she quietly vetoed scripts, turning down roles that might have seemed lucrative or prestigious, but could disrupt her carefully maintained artistic environment. This steadfastness is as much a part of her legacy as the awards on her shelf. Such decisions often meant walking away from potential breakthroughs or headline collaborations. In an industry built on networking and relationships, this selective approach risked isolation. Yet Streep's refusal to dilute her principles speaks to the high value she placed on emotional safety and mutual respect. The silence maintained around these feuds, no public statements or dramatic confrontations, also reflects her diplomatic nature and desire to keep personal grievances private. This delicate balance between excellence and conflict shaped Streep's body of work. While some contemporaries embraced spectacle or celebrity, Streep focused on depth, subtlety, and truth. The grudges she kept and the creative boundaries she set carved a rarefied space where she could explore her craft fully, but not without sacrifice. The stories behind these tensions illuminate how even the most revered artists grapple with imperfection behind the scenes. For audiences, this knowledge adds a more dimensional kind of depth to Streep's performances. When you grasp the quiet struggles and the personal hurdles, it makes the whole thing feel more real, like you can actually sense the emotional truth she carries into every role. It also nudges us to remember that greatness in art usually walks with unseen trials, almost like silent skirmishes waged well beyond the public eye. Streep's path feels like it holds both the grandeur and the lonely weight of artistic dedication. In a way, the unspoken rivalries and the firm boundaries, they also land as a strong message about self-respect inside creative partnerships. Her career decisions show that keeping integrity sometimes means saying no, even when the offer is attached to the biggest names or the most tempting money. In that choice, she kind of sets a professional benchmark that favors craft over convenience, and it reads as a lesson in courage and discipline for both artists and viewers. Still, those grudges weren't only fueled by bitterness, or whatever you want to call it. A lot of it came from real disappointment and the sting of expectations that never quite arrived when collaboration didn't respect that careful, almost sacred trust between performers. Streep's revelations point to the vulnerability hiding under that composed exterior, and it shows how much she cared about authenticity, preparation, and respect, what mattered in the bones. The fractures, well, they seemed tied not just to personal incompatibility, but also to a kind of betrayal of artistry. And looking back, these quiet battles shaped more than just Streep's career. They also fed into the broader culture around Hollywood professionalism, showing the friction between different acting philosophies, shifting celebrity norms, and the nonstop demands of the craft. Meryl Streep's rare admission of her deep-seated conflicts uncovers a side of Hollywood few have seen, a world where creative genius and personal tension collide. Her story reminds us that even legends face challenges that shape their art and careers. If this peek behind the curtain fascinated you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more revealing stories from the world of film. And for another surprising Hollywood story, click the next video waiting for you on the screen.